What if every prayer you learned begins in the wrong room? What if Jesus didn't simply teach us the right words to say? He taught a way to stand before God that most of us have never been shown. Jesus modeled a direct, interior posture that precedes the word and the work. It's subtle, it's ordinary, and over generations it was quieted, kept close in small circles, exercised by people who lived with an inner discipline, until for many of us, prayer became mostly asking from outside rather than entering from within. Look at the pattern. The Gospels do not present Jesus as someone who merely improvises words in front of crowds and then something happens. Time and again, the narrative shows a movement, withdrawal, alignment, and then speech. In Mark and Luke, he often slips away from the crowd to a quiet place before healing. In Matthew 14, after he feeds the 5,000, he makes the disciples get into the boat and goes up on the mountain by himself to pray. In the scenes of the healings, think of the paralytic let down through the roof, the woman who touches the edge of his cloak, the centurion's plea. Something interior precedes the public action. He looks up. He breathes into a silence that is not merely the absence of noise, but an internal ordering. Go to John 11. At the tomb of Lazarus, you have one of the clearest demonstrations of what I'm talking about. Jesus doesn't shout. He doesn't coerce the moment. He prays, yes, but notice the shape of the prayer. John 11:41 records Jesus saying, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." Then, with that inward word finished, he calls, "Lazarus, come out." He speaks as if the outcome were already in place, as if the temporal distance had been bridged. That past tense thanksgiving, "I thank you that you have heard me," is not simply rhetorical flourish. It reveals a posture where Jesus already inhabits the place where Father and Son speak and act as one. He enters an interior room of communion, aligns with the Father, and then issues the word that the world perceives as the miracle. And this is no isolated incident. When Peter walks on the water and begins to sink, Jesus' first move is not to grip him with technique, but to reach him from an earlier anchored attention. It is I, do not be afraid. When crowds press in for healing, Jesus often steps aside, looks up, or withdraws briefly, then speaks. There is a rhythm, withdrawal into presence, attunement, then word. The words are not magic syllables. They issue from a gathered center. They are spoken by someone who has been made a conduit. This reading reorganizes certain texts we already know. Matthew 6:6 has been quoted 1,000 times. When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. At first glance, it sounds like practical privacy, and it is, but there is also something deeper implied by the metaphor of a room or chamber.
The original Greek carries various nuances scholars debate. Some ancient interpreters imagine a small inner chamber, a treasury of the heart where the soul meets God beyond the public performance of piety. Jesus directs us not only away from public display, but toward an inward room, a place that is not just behind a locked door, but a cultivated interior posture. He names a location of encounter that is not measured by how visible our words are, but by whether we have entered into a receptive alignment with the Father. John 14:10 gives the theological spine to this practice. "The words I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority. The Father who dwells in me does his works." Jesus describes himself as a place where the Father dwells, an indwelling that makes speech an act of the Father speaking through him. The dynamics we see at Lazarus' tomb, on the mountain, by the lakeside, are not tricks or performance. They are the visible edges of an interior way of speaking, a way that consists of being gathered and letting the Father's presence become speech through you. How did such a thing become obscure? Part of the answer is historical and pastoral rather than conspiratorial. Early Christian communities preserved not only texts, but embodied practices, ways of prayer, fasting, silence, transmitted in smaller, close-knit contexts. The Desert Fathers and early monastic circles cultivated a disciplined inner life, structured silence, attention to the heart, practices that form an inner room. These were not secret to denigrate others. Often they were taught with caution because they require formation under guidance. As Christianity grew into a large public religion with liturgies, catechisms, and pastoral responsibilities, many of the interior techniques that once belonged to formation in close company could not easily be taught to entire congregations. Liturgy, sacraments, and communal prayer rightly became the scaffolding for a people, but the intimate practice of interior alignment, this entering and staying, tended over time to be practiced more by monks, hermits, and contemplatives than by every parishioner. So what was retained was the language of prayer, the words, and the public forms, What thinned out was the disciplined practice of remaining in the inner room until the speaker's identity was changed from someone who asks to someone who is spoken through. Historical evidence suggests this was not a nefarious hiding, but a pattern of transmission, the most interior methods passed carefully from teacher to disciple. That pattern, however, had the unintended consequence that large communities lost a living, embodied method of entering God's presence, and often reduced prayer to petition lists or to performative recitation. The posture remained, but the method that trains you to occupy it carefully and patiently did not travel at the same scale. Why does that matter for you? Because the posture matters more than the verbal content.
Most contemporary prayer looks like a checklist. I need this, I need that, bless this, bless that. There is nothing wrong with honest asking. Scripture invites it. But when asking remains external, it can keep you at a distance from the very source Jesus modeled. If the way he taught is a movement of entering an inner chamber, aligning with the Father's presence, and then speaking from that alignment, then the life you want, the life that sometimes includes healing, restitution, clarity, or peace, grows in proportion to your ability to enter and wait in that inner room. That is the pastoral urgency, not to promise instant marvels, but to restore a practice that trains you into a posture. This is not a formula to guarantee miracles, it is formation. It is not an exclusive power for a select few, it is a discipline that requires patience, humility, and time. It asks you to be both honest about your needs and serious about the interior work. If you are willing, let me offer a simple introductory practice you can try now, short, embodied, and without guarantees. Think of this as a door you are learning to stand at. It is the threshold practice, not the whole interior architecture. Find a place to sit where you will not be interrupted for a few minutes. Sit with your back upright but relaxed. Allow your hands to rest. Close your eyes softly if that helps you stay inward. Begin by noticing your breath. No forcing, just noticing. Inhale naturally, exhale gently. As you breathe, imagine each exhale releasing a small noise, a worry, a demand. Let the outward noise thin. Now turn your attention, not to a list, not to specific requests, but to the presence behind your thoughts. This is not a technique of mental gymnastics, it is noticing. You may notice sensations in your chest, quiet images, or simply a felt space. Stay with that noticing. When thoughts come, plans, anxieties, names, notice them as what they are, passing objects. Return your attention to the felt presence beneath and around them. After a minute or two of this settling, allow a soft question to arise, not as a demand, but as a posture. Father, are you here? Don't rush to answer. Wait. The waiting is itself prayer. If a word or phrase comes, thanksgiving, a memory, a simple sense of yes, receive it. If nothing seems to happen, remain. The practice is not scored by sensation. It is trained by staying. If you feel prompted to speak, let the speech be short and from that gathered place. It might be a single sentence of gratitude, a recognition, or a simple naming of the presence you feel. Jesus' example invites a posture that allows speech to issue from alignment, short, clear, and born of an inner stillness. Remember John 11, thanksgiving that the Father has heard, then a word that follows from that interior connection. End this brief practice with a breath that acknowledges your willingness to learn patience. Open your eyes when ready. Notice what changed. Maybe nothing dramatic, maybe a small reordering of attention. This micro-practice is intentionally modest. It gives you a way to begin entering the room Matthew mentions, without promising immediate outward consequences. It offers a habit. Retreat, attend, speak. Over weeks and months, repeated attention to this posture produces a particular interior architecture, the ability to remain in the waiting place longer, to let the identity of your prayer-shaping self shift from asker to conduit. Here is the crucial pastoral note. Sustained formation matters. The deeper layer I'm hinting at, what some mystics call the identity shift from asking to speaking from source, emerges over time, under guidance and with tested humility. Historically, teachers guarded those deeper instructions because they require readiness and ethical maturity. That caution was not about restricting grace, it was about protecting students from confusing spiritual experiences with spiritual depth. Many who entered the deeper practices benefited from custodial guidance, someone to name their blind spots, to call them back from pride, to show them how to wait.
The deeper teaching transforms how you experience speech itself. You no longer feel that power is something you command. You learn to recognize when you are a channel and when you are not. You learn to speak from union rather than from self-effort. I want to be clear. Recovering this way is not a promise of guaranteed outward miracles. The scriptures present Jesus' ministry as rooted in union with the Father, a union unique to him in its fullness. The method he modeled opens a posture which historically preceded power, but it does not provide a mechanical guarantee that certain external outcomes will always follow for every practitioner. The point is formation and alignment. Those who practice may find their prayers are transformed. Tone, timing, and substance change. Sometimes that delivers remarkable outcomes. Sometimes the chief result is interior peace and new obedience. If this is resonating with you, if the idea of learning to enter an inner room and speak from within feels like something you want to pursue, there are gentle next steps. I've put together a short packet of foundational notes, brief guided exercises, and a quiet space where a small group meets to practice this basic posture together. It's not a shortcut. It's a resource for people who want structure and companionship in the beginning stages. The link is in the description below. It will bring you to a place where you can download the basics and sign up for a low-pressure, short series that walks through the elementary practices. Use it or not, the invitation is simply available. Before we close, let's return to the scriptures once more so we don't lose the biblical anchor.
The episodes we mentioned are not proof texts for a method divorced from the person of Jesus. They are signs that a particular interior posture was central to his ministry. When he said, "Go into your room," he wasn't giving a trick for privacy alone. He pointed to a way to come into an interior place where the Father is known as presence. When he thanks the Father at Lazarus's tomb in the past tense, he models that temporal collapse, an interior enactment where speech follows alignment. When he tells the disciples that the Father dwells in him, he reveals the ground from which the words come. The recovery of this way will not require you to abandon communal worship, liturgy, or responsible ministry. Rather, it asks that you supplement these good practices with a disciplined interior life. The posture of going in is not a withdrawal from the world, but a preparation for it. Jesus didn't enter the room to hide from suffering. He entered to be formed to act rightly within it. Your entering prepares you to be a clearer vessel for love, mercy, and discernment. So go inward, close the door in the sense Jesus meant. Limit the performative noise, cultivate the inner chamber, and wait. Practice the simple breath attention I offered until it becomes a habit that steadies you. Give yourself to the slow work of formation rather than the quick fix of words. If you would like the foundational notes and a small, quiet community to practice with, the resource link is in the description. It's offered as a help, not as magic. Finally, remember that the Father who sees in secret is already present. This is not a game of gaining access to a distant God. It is learning to occupy the presence that has always been there. When Jesus spoke, he spoke from a unity with the Father that made words into action. You are invited to learn that posture, patiently, humbly, and with guidance. Enter your room, stay at the threshold, wait for the small rearrangements of the heart. Over time, the way you speak will change, and you will find that you are being taught from the beginning how to be spoken through.